Good morning, student. I hope you are fine in this wonderful morning. So, in last class, we studied about the disease caused by microorganisms in plant, animal, and human being. So, today we will study a new topic, that is food poisoning. So, basically, what is food poisoning? We will understand in a rough way. The consumption of poisonous food or toxic food is known as food poisoning. So, how the food turns toxic or poisonous, we will know in this food poisoning topic. In the case of uncovered food, not properly stored food, not properly cooked food, the food gets spoiled. So what we have studied till now, the uncovered food, not properly stored food, not properly cooked food get spoiled due to action of or infection of microorganism. Why the food turn or spoil up? Because the infection of microorganism. When the food is not covered, when the food is not cooked properly, or the food is not stored properly, then such kind of food is infected by microorganisms like bacteria or fungi. These bacteria and fungi releases toxic or poisonous substance on the food, and thus the food becomes poisonous or toxic in nature. And consumption of such kind of food, if we consume such kind of food, then we become ill, or such kind of food or such type of poisonous food leads to food poisoning. And student, thus we can say we are suffering from food poisoning, or a person is suffering from food poisoning. So what is food poisoning? Not properly stored food, not properly cooked food, or uncovered food. When it is infected by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, these bacteria and fungi releases toxic or poisonous substance in food, and when we consume such kind of food, such kind of food causes food poisoning. So now we will understand what are the symptoms of food poisoning. The symptoms of food poisoning is vomiting, headache, serious illness, and sometimes it leads to death. So student, we have understood what is food poisoning and the symptoms of food poisoning. The symptoms of food poisoning are vomiting, headache, and serious illness. So students, not only uncovered food, but in most of the cases, canned food, tinned food, or dippa bund food also causes food poisoning due to action of bacteria known as Clostridium botulinum. So a question arises now, which bacteria causes food poisoning? So now we have answer of this question. Clostridium botulinum is the bacteria which causes food poisoning. This is important question from your examination point of view. It may ask that which bacteria causes food poisoning. Then you can answer Clostridium botulinum. Now student, we will know what are the reason of the food poisoning. How food poisoning causes. So reason of food poisoning is oxidation of food item by microorganism present in the air. The first point is, what are the reason? So reason is the oxidation of food item by microorganism present in the air. Second point is decomposition of food by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi is the reason of food poisoning. So students, what happened when oxidation of food item by microorganisms present in the air? After oxidation of the food turns sour in taste or bad taste. So when the food turns sour in taste or in bad taste, then the color of food changes, and this way the oxidation of food changes and the food take place and the food get spoiled by the consumption of such type of food known as food poisoning. So student, now we have understood what is food poisoning. The uncovered food, not properly stored food, not properly cooked food are infected by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi that releases toxic or poisonous substance in that food, and when we consume such kind of food, then food poisoning causes. What were the symptoms of food poisoning? Vomiting, headache and serious illness, and sometimes it's caused to death are the symptoms of food poisoning. Our second question was which bacteria causes. We have known that bacteria and fungi causes that food poisoning. So which bacteria causes food poisoning? That is Clostridium botulinum. And what were the reason of food poisoning? Oxidation of food item by microorganism present in the air causes reason of food poisoning. And the second, decomposition of food by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi were the second reason of food poisoning. So student, now we will know the condition or factor that causes food poisoning. So now we will know what are the condition or factors that leads to food poisoning. So first one is moderately warm temperature and the second one is moisture. So we will know what is moderately warm temperature. Neither high temperature nor low temperature is known as moderately warm temperature. So student, we were studying condition or factor that causes food poisoning. So presence of moisture or presence of moderately warm temperature. So presence of moisture or presence of moderately warm temperature, the microorganism like bacteria and fungi releases toxic acts on the food. The microorganism like bacteria and fungi acts on the food and releases toxic or poisonous substance in the food. And when they release toxic or poisonous substance in food, the food get poisoned. When we consume such type of poisonous or toxic food, then it leads to food poisoning. If the food is not cooked properly, then moisture remains in the food. That moisture supports the growth of microorganisms, and thus microorganism releases toxic substance and the food get poisoned. Now our second point, if the food is not stored properly, then the microorganism enter food by air and releases toxic substance on the food, leading to spoilage of food, and consumption of such type of food leads to food poisoning. So now we will understand how to prevent the growth of microorganisms on our edible food and can be stored for long time. So now we will discuss what is food preservation. So student, what is food preservation? It is clear from its name how to preserve our food. The process of preserving food from getting spoiled by microorganisms is called food preservation. So the way or the process by which we preserve our food from getting spoiled by the microorganism is known as food preservation. Microorganisms like bacteria and fungi spoil our food by releasing toxic substance on our food. So student, microorganisms like bacteria and fungi releases toxic substance in our food. So we will inhibit the growth, we will stop the growth of such kind of microorganisms, which bacteria and fungi. is known as food preservation. So the process of preserving our food from getting spoiled up by the microorganism is known as food preservation. So what is food preservation? The process of preserving our food from getting spoiled by the microorganism like bacteria and fungi, which releases toxic substance or poisonous substance in our food, is known as food preservation. How we preserve our food from bacteria and fungi? This process is known as food preservation. So how can we preserve our food? We can preserve our food by controlling temperature. If we control the temperature, we can preserve our food. We will see it later on as the topic moves on. The second one is by controlling moisture of food, by controlling temperature of food, by controlling moisture of food. The third point is by the use of chemical in food. The first one was by controlling the temperature of food. The second one was by controlling the moisture of food. The third one is by use of chemical in our food, by use of physical method to preserve our food. So now we have studied the fourth way that we can preserve our food: by controlling temperature of food, by controlling moisture of food, by use of some chemicals in our food, or by some physical method to preserve our food. So students, just now we have studied that by controlling temperature we can preserve our food. So we will now study how can we control temperature to preserve our food. By controlling temperature, the food can be preserved. By controlling temperature, the food can be preserved for long time. Some food are stored at low temperature, while some edible items are stored at high temperature. Both low temperature and high temperature favors food preservation. So what we have studied, that by controlling temperature we can preserve our food for long time. We can store our food at low temperature, while we can store our food at low temperature and high temperature. So both low temperature and high temperature favors food preservation. By low temperature and high temperature we can preserve our food. At low temperature the speed of enzymes slow down, and this prevents the microorganism. Thus food is prevented from getting spoiled. The method of food preservation at low temperature is the method of preserving our food at low temperature. So students, what happened? At low temperature, the speed of enzymes slows down, and this prevents the microorganism to grow on our food, and thus the food is prevented. So what are the method of food preservation at low temperature? The first one is refrigerator and the second one is freezing. At low temperature we can preserve our food by refrigeration and freezing. So students, in our home, as we know that we have an electric appliance known as refrigerator. We preserve our food in refrigerator. So students, why do